we need to emphasize that Iran's strike, as large as it was not primarily designed to cause damage to Israel or to engage in indirect confrontation. That might sound a bit strange, given that we're talking about more than 320 missiles and drones. But what Iran did is that it telegraphed the attack in advance. It told its neighbors that it would be attacking. It then clearly had allowed the United States to learn about the attack because it would hear from those neighboring countries, which meant that the Israelis and the Americans were prepared to track the missiles and drones as they were launched. In addition, Iran fired on sparsely populated areas, especially on Israeli military positions in the Negev Desert in the south of the country. The outcome of all of this, not a single drone or cruise missile made it into Israeli airspace, let alone Israeli territory. And secondly, only 9 ballistic missiles actually made it through air defenses. 5 of them hit an airbase, Nevatim, in the Negev Desert, causing minor damage to a transport plane and a runway. 4 others hit another Israeli military position with no recorded damage. So you might ask, well, if Iran was doing this, why was it doing it? It was a demonstration attack. It was to do 2 things. One, demonstrate to Iranian people, oh, we're tough, we stand tall, despite Israel's assassinations of our commanders in Syria, especially the assassinations on April 1st in the Iranian embassy compound. And secondly, a demonstration to Israel which said, all right, if you hit us again in the Iranian embassy compound, if you assassinate our commanders, we might have to come back at you harder next time.
Yeah. So we know that the War Cabinet, the Israeli War Cabinet, is meeting right now as we're talking, Scott, assessing what to do next. Of course, globally, they are being urged to take a step back. Do you think they're going to listen to that advice?
Well, I think, Bev, first of all, we're not talking about a direct Israeli attack on Iranian territory inside the country. That has been the case for many years. When Benjamin Netanyahu wanted to do this in 2012, it was Israel's military and intelligence establishment that held him back. And of course, on this occasion, we've had high-profile international intervention, especially a phone call from Joe Biden to Benjamin Netanyahu saying, don't directly, we will not support a counterattack of this nature. The question is, well, 2 questions. One is, will Israel continue the targeted assassinations inside Syria? Will they step up, for example, targeting Hezbollah officials in Lebanon as those 2 countries skirmish on the Israeli-Lebanese border? Will they carry out covert attacks inside Iran, including on the Iranian military? And secondly, if they do that, is that acceptable to its allies, especially the United States?
And what do you think? Is that acceptable, or does it really start just igniting what could become a much broader conflict?
Well, I think where Israel crossed the line with even the United States was in, not that it assassinated Iranian commanders on April 1st in Syria, but it did so with the attack on the consular building next to the embassy. I mean, it's international law. It's an international rule of the game that you do not hit another country's diplomatic compounds, even if you're going after a high-value target. And in this case, the Iranian general overseeing Syria and Lebanon. Israel broke that law. They crossed that international rule, broke that rule of the game, as it were. And so, yeah, that caused some disquiet. I don't know if the Americans will now be tougher with the Israelis if they try to pick off other Iranian commanders, or if they continue the bombings inside Syria that they've carried out for more than a decade. I think probably if the Israelis aren't too blatant about it, they probably can return to what they were doing before April 1st.
Yeah. The domestic tensions for Israel must be ramping up. I mean, to have had that barrage of attacks, even though they managed to avert most of them landing in the country, is making a lot of Israelis very fearful, understandably. What do you think the tensions are in the War Cabinet in terms of who's got the upper hand? Is it still the right-wing rump of that government?
First of all, I don't think that the Iranian attack shifts that much on the needle for the Israeli public, who are quite used to rocket attacks and drone attacks. If the Iranians had caused a lot of casualties, if they had hit a populated area, it would be different. But if this is a one-off attack, I think the Israeli public will wear it. The question goes back to Gaza, and that is, will Benny Gantz and the defense minister Yoav Gallant finally accept some of the international pressure to rein in Israel's open-ended war. We've seen the conflicts over Israel blocking aid. We've seen the conflicts over them killing aid workers, killing other activists, killing journalists. And we've seen the tension over their possible invasion of Rafah with at least 1.3 million Gazans there. And I know the Americans are trying to isolate Netanyahu by working on Gantz, working on Gallant, but we still don't know which way those other two members of the war cabinet will go.
Indeed. Scott, really appreciate your analysis on this very tense moments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.